Welcome to the DevReady podcast. So today I have Joel joining me. Joel, I didn't ask you what your surname is, which is normally what I do before the call, but it's Vermaas is how I'm guessing you say it.
Yes, that's
close enough. I'll let you do an introduction yourself, so that way I don't botch anything else.
All good. So I'm Joel Vermaas. I'm the founder and director of Vibrant Insights. We're a market research, insights and strategy agency in Melbourne. We've been operating for about 3 years, but I've been in the research industry now for close to 2 decades.
Well, so market research. A lot of people may not know what that exactly means if we're talking about the world of, say, startups and business. They may just think of product like FMCG stuff, so fast-moving consumer goods and that sort of thing. So what does that relate to in the world of startups and founders and entrepreneurs?
Totally. Thanks for the question, Anthony. So when it comes to market research, essentially the best way to think about it is the conduit between your customer or potential customer and the business. So market research to me is absolutely anything and everything that gives you the intelligence that allows you to make decisions with confidence. When people think market research, they think, the traditional stuff, bunch of people sitting in a focus group or, someone calling you over dinner and asking you to spend 25 minutes asking a bunch of repetitive questions. It's much bigger than that, and it's evolved a great deal. So market research could be as simple as some desk research, going out, spending some time with Google, grabbing some existing research reports, all the way out to doing your own research. And probably where I specialize is in the brand side of things. So understanding your market, potential opportunities, understanding your customers, what makes them tick, what they need in their lives, all the way through to optimizing your product, your pricing, your service offering, what you include in it, through to communications and everything in between.
Yes, it's a wide spectrum. I'll say then for a brand level. So if you were a new startup or say a business looking at trying to potentially scale up and franchise, or because there'll be similar kinds of concepts in being able to scale and grow for either a startup or that business into a larger entity, with the brand focus, does that start from logo and name and see how that resonates with your target audience? Or is it even earlier than that in the beginning? All right, this is your idea. Who's the target audience? Then we start focusing everything around that and then start getting feedback.
Totally. So I agree. It starts much earlier. I think the best way to think about it, if you're thinking about a startup, you're probably thinking about solving a problem of some description. You've landed on something you see in the market. There's a gap. People have a pain point and you're there to help them solve it. Great. The way the research comes in is it's really about understanding, let's define that problem really clearly. So let's go out, speak to those customers or potential customers and start with what's going on, why is that a pain point for them, what's the implication. It's then back in that understanding the size of that market. How many people are sharing that? Is that something which you and maybe a handful of other people have? Or is it a much bigger opportunity? And then it's about understanding your primary target, your secondary target, your tertiary targets. So it's really before you even think about logo, brand name, etc. Absolutely start there. But I'd say it's probably just foundational. What's the market size? What are the problems people are facing and how can you help them solve it? And really going from there.
Okay, so it's really like, if you're a startup, it's the foundations of your pitch deck.
Spot on. It's the foundation of your pitch deck, right? It's the size of the opportunity. It's you running the commercials to say, if we build this thing, how big is the opportunity for us? Are we going to be serving 3 people or are we serving 300,000?
Yeah, and serving 3 people, unless they're very, very, very large customers, it's not really going to be a business that you should be going down that path. So,
exactly right.
What sort of market research are you performing for when say, an example of a startup comes to you, they've got an idea of the product, a rough idea of the market. What does the market research involve, or what is it that they need to start considering when they come to someone like you?
Totally. So for most businesses, particularly if you're a startup, cash is going to be pretty lean. And I understand that the investment isn't going to be enormous when it comes to research. But I would suggest all startups think about investing even a small amount. There's nothing to replace spending a bit of time seeing the whites of your customers' eyes and hearing them talk in their own language about the things they're facing. Programs can be small. It could be as simple as a handful of depth interviews. Recruit some people. There's a whole bunch of platforms out there that allow you to recruit people on spec. Say you're solving a problem with, say you're a company that's looking to solve something around automating payments. Mm-hmm. Think about your target market, who you're looking to target. Say that's a small business. You're trying to solve something for small businesses who don't have time, who don't know how to navigate that. Plenty of platforms where you can go out and find a half dozen small business owners, sit down with them, pay them some money for their time and just have a conversation with them. Explore people who aren't necessarily in your immediate network and just have a conversation to understand what are they going through, what do they need, what would a product do in terms of how it solves their problems, and go from there. So it can be as simple as a half dozen depths, all the way up to large scale surveys of several hundred or several thousand people to understand what their challenges are. But really what you're looking to do there is understand in their own language, what are the problems they're facing? Will your product solve it for them? Putting some ideas in front of them and help them get some early stage ideas.
Okay, so from there, once you talk to those people, you get some feedback. Assuming then smaller sets going to be quite easy to understand and where the correlations lie across them, and sort of the same data will come back, and then you can say, all right, three out of the 10 people said something was wrong, so maybe that's something we can ignore or build up, because depending on how many people are saying the same thing, it will be a positive indicator. When you have larger data sets, you're doing a larger reach, so I'm guessing you may run online polls or surveys, you get a large data set. Does that become more challenging in trying to understand the feedback, because there'll be a lot of noise?
I'd probably say the opposite. Okay. Generally, what we tend to recommend is the two main disciplines we think about is qualitative research, which is what you've spoke about first. 10 people, one-to-one conversations, really getting into the detail. What you're looking for there is reaching saturation, which is a point where you're not really uncovering any new insights, but you get a breadth of responses. What you do then is you move that into a poll to get you the hard, validated numbers. Polls don't need to be massive. A few hundred people is enough. Even 100 people can often be enough. In many ways, that's easier because then you've got 100 people and you can size the opportunity. 3 out of 10, you run a second group, you might find 6 out of that. Those 10, you might run a third group, you might find 1 out of 10. Whereas when you start to run up to 100, 200, 400 people, those numbers start to soften out. The variability in the data softens out, and you can start to get some clarity around, actually, this is the way to move forward.
Okay, it does make sense here. The larger the sample size, the clearer the results will end up being.
Spot on. And there is a balance point. I would say bigger isn't always better. In statistics land, if you start to get into a massive sample size of tens of thousands of people, what you end up finding is differences of 1% to 2% become significant. Mm-hmm. And in business, that starts to become confusing. So there is this sweet spot between too few, you get a lot of error in your data, way too many people, and you end up jumping at shadows because 1% here. And businesses, you're not necessarily, unless you're a multi-billion-dollar business, you're not making a decision based on 52 versus 53% of people. We're talking broad quantum. So in broad terms, I'd say a few hundred people is all you need. But that gives you the confidence for that pitch deck. It gives you the confidence about when you're designing your product, when you're looking at pain points, when you're looking at your delighters, what's the kind of size and scale and scope of those.
Okay. So what other market research would you do along with just, say, surveys to try and get an idea of should you move forward, or to provide you with enough evidence to make that decision that you mentioned earlier?
The world's changing a lot. So the old days of market research used to be, when I first started, we were still doing face-to-face interviews, bringing people into a central location, getting them to watch ads, doing product testing face-to-face. That's changed a lot. I'd say probably with market research, the key thing you're looking to do is forge some kind of question or hypothesis and go out and test that. And that can be exploratory, that can be confirmatory. As we mentioned before, kind of focus groups, one-on-one depth interviews is kind of your starting point. It gets you some really nice detailed conversation starters. Move that into some quantification. So you're kind of polling online surveys. But then you can also do some cool new things like if you've got existing sales data, let's say you're an e-commerce platform and you're selling products, start to look through that, understand some of the trends. What do you see the main lines moving? What do you tend to see the key kind of times in what's going on? What are the trends in terms of your customer base? But that can also start to expand into, say, A/B testing. So you can create some ads, you can start to create different types of copy, put that out using meta suites, for instance, and run some A/B tests. And you can start to make some decisions there about if we have certain phrases, if we have certain offers, certain products, color profiles, fonts, logos, whatever, what gets us the best click-through, what gets us the best response. So you can start to use things like experimental methods and behavioral methods to understand what people are going to resonate with.
Okay. So just touching on, say, the ads there, you mentioned Meta, so that'll be Facebook ads, is the general term most people probably recognize it as. With running ads, when you're, say, doing A/B testing, are you comparing two completely different ads like apples to oranges, or are you testing a red orange to a red apple to a green apple, like just minor changes along the way?
Everything and anything. Okay. I mean, again, in the older days of testing, it was fiendishly expensive to do this stuff. So you tended to want to get it right first time, and you tend not to want to do as much. These days, I'm finding because the cost of research is coming down, because you can do these large-scale automated campaigns, particularly through Meta, you do have the license to go broad. So you can start with apples and oranges and bananas. From there, you might start to discover, actually, it's apples are the way forward. Now we can start to play with apples. Is it red? Is it green? Is it pink? So absolutely, you can go broad and totally random things, or you can start to test the nuance in that. Very easy to do, very cheap to do.
Yep. Yeah, the cost of the CPC and the cost per click is quite low these days, and I'm guessing you're doing it for the impression count, and then just trying to see what the conversion ends up being on a click from that number of ads. So in saying that, how long should you be keeping something running to see if it's actually statistically significant, or how many views are you looking to get? Because you said a couple hundred when you're looking at a survey or a poll. What's it mean in ad land?
Guess it depends on what your end outcome is, whether you're looking to drive clicks or drive conversions. I'd say probably in the first instance, when you're looking at make a decision in terms of broad creative decisions, a few hundred is all you need to get those percentages and understand which way to go, and then tune from there. It also depends on what the cost is and what you're looking to sell. So in research land, for 10, 20K, you could probably do a reasonable research study and start to get some data on informing a major communications piece. That can be a really good use of your budget, particularly if you're looking to spend north of hundreds of thousands. For a business, spending a small percentage of that on a bit of primary research can save you potentially hundreds of thousands in the back end in terms of efficiency. So it really depends on what your outcome is. But with the relative cost efficiency of Meta, Facebook, Instagram sort of ads, it is quite effective just to run those basic A/B tests to start to get your tune, and then from there.
Okay. So for an example, you could be running ads to just try and get views to your website, and those ads may be testing taglines or words that attract people to try and get. So what's the words that will convert the most or resonate the most with the target audience? And then it may be, all right, what colors get people's attention, and then those two together within variations, and then take it from there as a really simple way to explain that.
Spot on. So we've recently done a campaign which admittedly was more about recruiting people to a research project ourselves. So we've just been through this as a business. We looked at running a bunch of different copy. So we looked at both tagline variations, the reward variations, and looking at the imagery that we use. And we've run a whole bunch of different styles. So looking at different families, different ages of people, even within people, different genders, different looks, doing different things at that time. So we've very quickly taken a look at, in your example, apples, oranges, or bananas. And then within that, we started to experiment with different taglines. So which is the best call to action? From that, we've gone from about 24 different creative units to now down to 3 or 4, which we know are working hard in terms of capturing attention and getting people through into our recruitment.
Okay. So I think that's a really good overview as an idea of what the market research is for a brand, that I wasn't sure that it was covering all of those points as well that you've just raised and discussed. So you mentioned that you were working corporate and you've gone out and started yourself. What made you jump out from the corporate and then come in to start your own agency?
A few things. So I think after running lots of people's businesses very closely with them and for them, I thought, there's a lot of good stuff going on. I was inspired by seeing the stories of other founders to give it a shot myself. And the other part for me as well was really wanting to make a difference in the world. So a big part of what we've started to do is we want to do great commercial work, but we also want to give back and have a focus on community. So it's the intersection between community and commerciality. And I think it's a hard thing to get right. I don't want to be a bleeding heart telling everyone to go out there and hug trees and turn vegan and, go and live in a yurt. By all means, please do go plant and hug more trees. But I didn't want to move away from too much of the commercial side because I love doing really good commercial work. I love working with big businesses and big clients. So a big part of what Vibrant has started to do is do great work, but give back. And we do that through donating 10% of our profits to charity. We're 1% for the Planet members. We do lots of pro bono and low bono work as well, which feels pretty good.
Yep, I'm sure giving back to the community and being able to help those who can't get ahead and have that benefit, and that's a great thing to do.
And it's the other part as well, is helping businesses that otherwise can't afford research. We've had plenty of clients, many of them startups, many of them small scale, who approach us and they want to do great quality market research. But unfortunately, the major research providers, it's just really expensive. Their commercials are way different, right? Their operating costs, they've got expensive rents, they've got ownership structures, they've got huge amounts of people and infrastructure that sit behind them. It's really hard for them to get out of bed for a low value. Yep. Whereas the way we've set up Vibrant is an incredibly lean operation, which means we can get out of bed much easier for much lower values, and it means we can help clients grow their business. And we love being part of that transformation. Clients start small. We see that growth trajectory with them on that journey and eventually see them grow and become bigger clients with greater market share. It's really nice being part of that journey.
It is nice. We're part of that on the tech side, so we help startups with, they have an idea or they come to us with something written on a napkin. You end up helping them build software, and then if they make the right decisions, you see they grow and move forward and they prosper from that, and that's always a good thing. And that's our way of giving back is through this podcast and donating our time and speaking to experts and people like yourself, where we hopefully can shed some insights into decisions and advice that can actually help them drive something forward.
Exactly right. And I'm sure this will resonate with you. For me as well, it's the variety, right? I love working in the industry I work in because the clients are so different. And, my day varies from, looking at property portals through to, cremations, funerals, memorializations, all the way through to white milk. Like the variety is enormous, and it keeps my brain ticking over and it keeps me guessing, which I love.
Yeah, it's similar to us. We don't have as much variety in a day because we have a set number of projects, but you do go very deep in those topics. So become almost a mini expert in things. And that's the other part that I enjoy is the variety, the being able to learn new things, because I enjoy learning anything about anything. And then being able to have that problem solving, which is something you'd have. That's all right, we've got an idea. How do we test it to see if that idea is valid and move forward with it? And then, all right, what variations can we make on that idea to improve it again? So you've almost got like a game that you're playing.
Spot on. And we spoke about this earlier, right, Anthony, about the origins of what you're doing, DevReady, and you think about where so many people start from. I think I'm the only person to have ever faced this problem. Yep. The truth is that regardless of the business, there's common challenges that all businesses tend to face at various points in their lifestyle or their life stage. That being said, it will differ enormously across industry, but fundamentally it's similar kind of challenges. So being able to impart that knowledge and say, well, it's maybe not your industry, but we've seen this in these kind of facets, and here's how they navigated it. It's a great way to pass that knowledge back on and help someone else jump over a pitfall.
Yeah, and that'll be tying back to having enough evidence to make a decision. The amount of evidence or the type of evidence you need is going to be very similar for most businesses, and the decisions they're making are going to be quite similar as well. It's, do we go in direction A or direction B? And whether the direction's a service or a product or scaling up or scaling down or whatever it may be, it's going to be, do you have enough evidence to help you make the right decision? There's no right or wrong. You'll just figure it out after you assess it, I guess.
Spot on. And what I will say to a lot of founders and a lot of businesses, one of the greatest examples I've got of a business that is super successful and does this really well is Seek. Seek is a great business that is fueled by great quality data and insights, but a really healthy dose of intuition. Having worked with various people at Seek over the years and seeing where they've gone in their careers, what makes them great and what makes Seek and those marketers great is they take from that a sense of intuition about where the market is. They use some research to tune that, and then they take the intuition to get it home. Now, what you were suggesting is the direction. The advice I provide to any founder, anyone starting to scale a business up, even if you're in an established business, research is the difference from having 360 points on a compass and figuring out where you go. You don't have to spend big, and you don't have to have a precise heading of we're going to 345 degrees. It's enough to go, right, in 360, can we narrow it down? Are we going north? Are we going west? Are we going northwest? Even that direction, start in that direction. You're at least heading the right direction, and you can tune and course correct as you go. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be enormous. Agile methodologies work for this reason. You don't have to go out there and drop $100,000 on a 12-month program to figure out this is the precise direction. Do some quick learning. Learn quick, fail fast, tune your direction, take a few steps, and keep tuning and adjusting. Yeah, doesn't need to be big in order for it to be good.
Definitely, it's making a decision and just moving forward. If you don't know anything, decide how you're going to look at something and then assess it again. A lot of people just doing their first step is the challenging part, and then they don't end up going anywhere, or they let the decision almost paralyze them and stop them from moving forward.
That's it. And coming from a scientific background, you start everything with hypotheses. Start with a position. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be wrong. You're out there to prove the hypothesis correct or incorrect, null hypotheses. So you're going out there saying, I believe this is the case. Cool. We've got a stance. Now we've got something to benchmark against. So to your point, don't be paralyzed. Take the first step, make your commitment, make a statement, go out and test it. If it's wrong, fabulous. You've learned something. Learn, adapt, pivot.
Yeah, that's the best way to take it. And yeah, especially the learning, it's understand the decision and the outcome, and then take something away from that. Because if you don't take something away from it, you'll either repeat it or you just keep doing things aimlessly without course correcting, as we say.
Spot on. And I think it's one of the great challenges when you look at survivor bias, when you look at any business and you say, gee, they're successful. You hear about all the great stuff they did. You don't often hear about all the failings and the mistakes and the errors that were made when they started and probably continue to be made to this day. Working in lots of organizations, the amount of stuff we test where it's not quite there, it needs to be tuned. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes. It's, as you said, how we learn and adapt from them and the lessons we take and the way that informs our future that makes the difference.
Yep. So what are some sort of key questions if you were starting out to either launch a new product or a service that as a business, that you should start thinking about trying to test?
So again, starting with that kind of hypotheses or getting a broad business plan in place, I think the first question, or the questions you'd be asking yourself, is what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Break it down. Why do I need to solve this problem? Why is it important? How much of a pain point is this for people? Who am I trying to solve it for? So defining who the kind of primary target, and then who are the other people that might fall out of that? And then start to think how you connect yourself with those people. Where will I find those people for whom I'm going to solve that problem? How do I connect with them? How do I find them? How do I engage with them? What's it going to cost me to solve it? And what's it going to cost someone to pay me to solve it for them? And from there, everything else will shake out. Here's the need. Here's the audience. Here's how I find them. This is what it's worth to them. And here's how I scale it up.
Okay, yeah, it's just really setting that plan in motion and just being clear in a really short summary.
And it sounds really easy, right? But it's a lot of thinking. And I know it's really easy for me to say, just go out and define the problem and define the target audience. Easy, right? It's the product of countless nights and thinking and hard work. Have that really good business plan. I mean, I'm sure you've got plenty of them. Jump online. There's plenty of great business plans on Google. Lots of free templates to start from. The key thing is to start from something written down. It gives you a point from which to reference, test some hypotheses, test some examples, and tune from there.
So something that just came to me now is if you are trying to sit down and think and you're having trouble, like I say, some people don't know what to do or don't know how, can you see how if asking ChatGPT some questions around that and explaining what your business does can put you in the right direction potentially? Is that something that you've seen come into the space over the past year and a bit?
Yeah, it's a funny conversation you bring up. I'm sitting on the committee of the Research Society. It's one of the national bodies that looks after my industry. Mm-hmm. And we're running a few sessions around AI and where AI is going. And there's a big movement at the moment now, not just ChatGPT, not in terms of the way in which we use that to get ideas started or to analyze large chunks of data, but also synthetic users. And that's starting to evolve as well, where we're starting to create digital personas that never get tired, that you can ask as many questions as you like. So things like those AI large language models, they are great to start to jot ideas, to start to push on things. Increasingly, we will see synthetic users. So by synthetic users, what I mean is a generated digital persona that takes real data and creates a semi-real human out of it based on what we know. And you can create a whole bunch of them and ask them questions, and they can sit down in a room and they never get tired. You can spend 4 hours querying them and starting to push on what their problems are. Those kinds of AI tools and large language models are becoming more and more powerful. I will say they're a great starting point, but remember, you've got access to them, so does everyone else. So it's not going to give you a competitive advantage unless you get the prompts right. So I'd say it's a good starting point. Absolutely. ChatGPT, all the different large language models, generative models, fabulous starting point. But I will say as well, nothing replaces sitting down with a person and actually having a conversation with them.
Yeah, so just touching on that, say, synthetic users, you'll either have to have data that you're priming each one with, so you'll have to understand the personas and have data collected to do that, or you're specifying the persona that it should act like as part of your prompt, which means that even if you give it 100 different personas and you keep going with questioning, eventually all those personas are pulling from the same data that they've been trained on. You've given the context, but they can, I'm guessing, overall end up being the same if you ask it long enough.
Correct. Totally. So, I mean, there are some movements in the industry now where people are creating businesses to create distinct personas, and they're creating panels of synthetic users that you can go out and query. So we are starting to see people take real market research data and use that to train personas. So we do have a person which looks and feels and functions a lot like Anthony, and a person who looks and functions a lot like Joel. It's not going to be Joel, but it's a good allegory and a good kind of way to replace, at least in the first instance, based on the training data. That being said, the way these things are working, getting more sophisticated, they can also start to scrape conversations. So you can look at things like trawling through subreddits, through Whirlpool, through Facebook comments, Instagram comments, any kind of dedicated internet forums. So these things are getting more sophisticated and they can start to pull from existing data sets. But you're right, there's also a point where it can only ingest what it can ingest. And there's a point where that training data will run out.
Yep.
And that for me is where the intersection of a human being driving the software is great, but ultimately sitting down opposite a person and understanding them and their needs and having that conversation, it's never going to be replaced by a machine.
Yeah, no, never will be, unless we hit that that level of AI where it's I can't remember what it's called, not the autonomous one, the general artificial intelligence that can just do things on its own, and we really don't actually understand how it's working. These ones we sort of understand, but don't.
I dare say when we reach that point, we won't need humans as much anymore, right?
Yep.
We'll be bots selling to bots, designing for bots, which is bought by more bots.
That's when we start looking at the movies for cautionary tales. So
exactly right.
In saying that, with say the AI and the large language models and generative AI, what I'm guessing is probably an easy way to start is to use that to help you form your hypothesis, and then go out and talk to real people. So you can pretend to talk to those synthetic people, ask them some questions, get some general directions from those personas. Now go and validate that with real people, because that's who's actually buying your product or your service,
I think it's a great
who you're selling to.
Exactly. I think it's a great way for any founder to get started. Ultimately, those models are trained on enormous data sets, far more than you can ever canvas. So as a starting point to ask some questions, to understand a category, to get some of that general knowledge started, it's a great starting point. Once you start to get further in that, you can ask it to act like people, behave like this kind of person who's got this needs. Think about some of the different frameworks in terms of wearing different hats or different business sizes, whatever that might be, push and prompt. And once you start to tune that and take again from 360 degrees down to maybe 90 degrees, now go out and speak to a few people. Doesn't have to be many, but just sit down with a couple of potential target audience and explore a bit further with them once you've got that button down.
Yeah, I think that's a solid strategy for anyone listening out there to go through and follow. It's start that easy way and then build out to real people and actually get your proper insights. And then you can probably go back to ChatGPT and get it to help you analyze everything, save some time.
Quite literally, yes. But I think that's the magic, right? Yep. It's the human driving the machine. The machine isn't going to do it all for you. Being a human, there's only so much information we can handle and so much we can do. But the power is going to come from having smart humans wielding software, wielding capability. And it's always changed, right? If you think about if you're a developer or a programmer, sure, you can go and jump on GitHub and go and grab some stuff, but unless you know how it all fits together, you're taking a whole bunch of different random puzzle pieces and shoving them together, and what's going to come out the other end, it's not going to be pretty and it's not going to work. Yep. So you still need to have a working knowledge and have a human driving this thing, at least for the time being.
Yep, and that's the approach that we tell everyone. It doesn't do the work for you, it just gives you a draft. You have to then put your expertise on top still and your knowledge to get it to where you need it to be.
I mean, it's happening in every industry, right? Mm-hmm. You think about using drills and power tools. Just because you've got a drill doesn't mean you can build a house. You still need to have the skills and knowledge. You don't have to go back to, doing the manual work just to have some kind of bizarre sense of this is real and authentic. Absolutely use the tools, but you need the knowledge and you need the skills and experience to take you there. It makes your life easier, but it doesn't replace the hard work.
Yeah, and a similar example I've heard of that was when tractors were invented, there was a huge outcry from farmers. They thought they'd be out of jobs because the tractor was replacing their horse and cart and oxes and plows.
Exactly right. The farmer's job is the same. And sure, maybe we don't have quite as many farriers and maybe it's more of a recreational pursuit now. Yeah. But the world changes. We still need the same people to do the same jobs.
Farriers turned into mechanics. There's still a parallel for them to move to. So for anyone listening out there, if they want to get in touch or understand just a quick way to get started, how can they reach out, and do you have any information you can share on what's the first step someone can do after they're listening to this? Yeah,
absolutely. So first thing I'd say, if you're looking to scale a business, get yourself one of those great templates out there, start to build some foundations, define who your customer is, define what their problems are, define how you're solving it. There's lots of different ways to phrase that, but start from that. To get started in research, there's lots of really good platforms out there, lots of self-serve platforms. Reach out, always happy to chat to any founders and help them scale up. I'd say as well, reach out to any of your founders' networks. There's lots of really good networks in Australia, small business startups, founder groups. If you're into climate change tech, Climate Seller is another great group. Start to reach out to like-minded people. And then, always happy to chat and point people in the right direction to do some research. Otherwise, Insight Platforms is a really good place to start. They've got lots of different tools and techniques. There's hundreds of thousands of people who do what I do in various scales. Lots of that automated, lots of that manual. So go out there, form some hypotheses and go and test them.
Cool. And if there's anyone wants to reach out, would LinkedIn be the best place to reach you?
Absolutely. Either LinkedIn, jump onto Vibrant Insights in LinkedIn, you'll find us, or our insights, vibrantinsights.com.au. Happy to chat to any founders or anyone kind of scaling up and help point them in the right direction.
Cool. We'll put those notes in those links in the show notes. Well, Joel, thank you for your time this morning. It's been great to have a chat and actually get some more insight into what sort of the market research industry looks like, because I've never been a part of it or known much. So hopefully someone else has learned something, not just me.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me, Anthony. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Cheers.